Elon Musk is known for his innovations, but on this day, he was in for a different experience, a court hearing where he stood as the defendant. He had been fined for violating environmental standards in production related to one of his latest initiatives. This wasn't the first such situation in his life, but this time the judge proved incredibly resilient to his usual strategies of retreat or revision. The courtroom was silent. The room, painted in light shades of gray, gave a sense of a cold, emotionless atmosphere. Only the sound of the judge's gavel and the occasional rustling of papers filled the air. Elon Musk, the judge, began with a serious look. You've been fined for serious violations of environmental standards in your latest initiative. How do you justify yourself? Musk cleared his throat, placed his hands on the table, and looked at the judge. His gaze was not the usual arrogance or pride. It was composed. He was ready for a conversation, but not for this. "We are working on projects that will change the world," he replied, his voice calm but tinged with tension. "Sometimes, to achieve great goals, certain risks must be taken. I admit there were flaws, but that doesn't mean our goal was wrong." The judge remained silent, her gaze attentive but piercing. She didn't seem impressed by Musk's famous name. Even his reputation had little impact on her. She was someone for whom laws mattered more than personalities, and that made her especially significant in this case. "And this," she said, dismissing the papers, "what gives you the right to ignore environmental standards? Do you think the planet can handle another such initiative, relying on people like you to change the world?" Musk fell silent. He was usually able to respond to any question or criticism, but here, something was different. The judge wasn't an ordinary figure just doing her job. She was a true professional, someone who understood the weight of every statement she made. Her words carried weight, even for someone like him. "I'm willing to pay the fine," he said, "but I hope you see why we are doing this. My company takes responsibility for this project, and we are willing to correct our mistakes." The judge looked at him for a few seconds, and she could have responded the same way everyone else would. But she felt there was something more to this. The time when this hearing would be just another story about violations had passed. She decided to respond not just as a judge, but as someone who held firm beliefs. "I respect your desire to change the world," she said, her voice softer, but it did not betray her seriousness. "But sometimes, change doesn't come through attempts to avoid responsibility. It comes through the desire to understand what went wrong and how it can be fixed." Musk looked surprised. The judge continued, "I know who you are and what you've achieved. But perhaps it's time for you to look at the world through the eyes of those you consider smaller than yourself." The room became utterly quiet. It was a moment that changed the entire atmosphere of the trial. Elon held his gaze on the judge, trying to find anything in her words that could be perceived as weakness. But her face revealed no doubt. She was unshakable, and it started to make him nervous. "Do you think I don't understand what you're saying?" His voice was dull but sharp. "You want me to hit pause? To stop the greatest innovations of this century over a couple of violations?" The judge slightly tilted her head, her gaze unwavering. "You don't understand," she said calmly, but with a certain sternness in her voice. "Your innovations will mean nothing if they are destroying what you're trying to build. And even more if you are not ready to understand the consequences of your actions for people, for the planet, for all of us." Elon felt the temperature in the room rise, and his skin became more sensitive to every word the judge spoke. He inhaled deeply, as if preparing to respond, but in his eyes something unfamiliar appeared. Doubt. "My company is not just another corporation," he said, raising his eyebrows. "It's a revolution, and all these changes, they cannot wait. I can't just turn back over small mistakes. This is no longer about money, it's about the future." The judge didn't look away. Then you must understand that great changes require great sacrifices, she responded, her words now firmer. And sacrifices cannot come only from others. If you want your company to change the world, start by changing yourself. Otherwise, you will only be accountable for your ambitions, not your beliefs. The tension in the room became taut, like a string pulled too tight. Elon felt his inner world begin to crack. He was used to criticism, but this was different. She wasn't just criticizing his projects or his decisions. She was questioning his essence, his resolve to change the world. Elon clenched his fists, but instead of releasing his emotions on the judge, he took a deep breath and asked, "And you want me to just give up? Leave everything I've worked for? Walk away from what could change the world?" The judge looked at him, her gaze not just evaluative, but as if it awakened an understanding of how important this battle was. She didn't rush to answer. "No, I don't want you to give up," she said, stepping a little closer, almost aligning herself with his gaze. "I want you to understand that true change begins with acknowledging your mistakes and being ready to fix them. Only then will you become a true leader, not just someone trying to save their interests." Elon nervously glanced at her stern but calm face. A flicker of disappointment flashed in his eyes, but his response was no longer as sharp. "And you think I don't understand that?" His voice lost some of its previous confidence. "You don't know what I've been through, Judge. You don't know how many people I've already lost, how much I've had to sacrifice. I know what I'm doing, but I can't stop." The judge furrowed her brows, her hands becoming a little more tense. She watched him, as if trying to find something in his words that would help her make a decision. "You won't stop, but the question is, are you ready to keep going in the name of real change, or are you just trying to hold onto what has already become excessive? I want to see you change the world, not just your own benefits." Elon fell silent. The judge slowly lifted her gavel, but didn't strike it, as if preparing her final statement. "You will be able to prove your words only if you start by showing your willingness to change. I am willing to help you with this, if you're willing to change your approach. And it won't be about your finances, but about the people who are waiting for you to answer." Elon was forced to take a step back, processing her words. He wasn't prepared for such a turn. This woman, small in her position but great in her essence, had placed him in a situation where he would have to either change his strategy or submit to advice, and stop himself from becoming just another person left behind. Elon took a step back, slightly shaken by her words, but in his eyes burned a different fire, not fatigue, but anger. He didn't like it when his weaknesses were pointed out, and now he felt his nerves tearing apart. The judge stood before him, her gaze unchanging, but he could feel a challenge hidden in her eyes. "Do you think I don't understand?" His voice was quiet, but it already carried a threat. "You want me to stop because of a few violations? To take a step back just because some analyst doesn't agree with my decisions?" The judge didn't budge, only her hand gripping the gavel tightened. She was ready for this conflict. This wasn't just a courtroom session. It was a battle of ideas. She knew that if she gave in now, he wouldn't back down, and that could cost her more than just her reputation. "You're not hearing me, Elon," she replied calmly, but her words cut through the air like a cold storm. "You're not hearing how the ideas you're proposing are destroying everything we've tried to achieve. Your company can change the world, but you can't leave behind a wasteland. People aren't just statistics or results of your models. They have the right to dignity. And until you understand that, I won't back down." Elon flared with anger, his gaze fixed on her stubborn expression. He knew this woman had no intention of compromising, and that sparked in him a desire to break her, to show who was truly in control of the situation. "You want me to compromise?" He stepped forward, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I can't do that. I won't sacrifice the future just to satisfy someone's idea of morality or ethics. I've already sacrificed my principles for a long time, and none of this is to teach me how to be a human. I'm here to fulfill my mission, and you won't stop me. All eyes in the room were on him. Each word shot out like an arrow. But the judge didn't flinch. "Yes, you can change the world," she said slowly, her voice unwavering even under the pressure of his words. "But only if you're willing to change along with it. You can't move forward, leaving people behind. So, if you want to leave your mark in history, do it not through threats, but through understanding that you're responsible for everything you create." Elon frowned. He tried to keep control, but his emotions were growing. He was ready to destroy the situation, but he knew that right now, in this moment, he would have to stop and take a pause. "I'm not looking for your permission," he said, trying to hold himself together. "And I won't stop. If this has to be a war of principles, I'm ready to fight it. And if I lose, it will be my choice. But if you want to stop me, you'll have to do more than just speak." She didn't immediately respond, only looked at him with calmness that sparked even more anger in his heart. And then, finally, she took a step forward, her words landing like a final blow. "If you're a true leader, then you need to be able not only to act, but also to listen. If you want to achieve what you're claiming, you must accept the fact that every success will come with a price that not everyone will be able to pay. And you won't win unless you're ready for that." Elon felt everything inside him tighten. His ambitions, his drive, his desire to change the world, all of it suddenly became uncertain. And now, in this confrontation, he understood. His mission and his principles couldn't exist without understanding and without the price he would need to pay. He stood there, his eyes no longer filled with confidence, only with a heavy question. Elon felt his inner peace beginning to crack. He tried not to show any doubts, but they crept into his mind like cold waves. The judge stood before him, her eyes filled with neither fear nor retreat. She was ready to go to the end. All those months he had spent working, trying to create something great, now seemed like an empty chase. "Do you think I don't understand the price?" His voice was bitter, each word feeling as heavy as a stone. "I see people suffering. I see what happens when we place a goal above everything else. But you don't understand that I'm not doing this for myself. You don't understand that I won't stop." The judge looked at him calmly, as though her words were precisely calculated to pierce him, not just provoke emotions. "You won't stop because you don't know where the limit is," she replied without a hint of pity in her voice. "You don't see that your fight for the future is destroying everything we have now. You're making people pay for your idea for a new world. But what if that new world turns out to be empty?" Elon felt a tightening in his chest. It was as if she wasn't just talking about his project, but about him. What if everything he had strived for didn't matter? What if everything he had placed his hopes in would immediately crumble like a sandcastle by the shore? He clenched his fists, trying not to let his emotions take over. But the judge's voice was so strong that he couldn't simply ignore her words. "Do you want me to give up?" His voice was broken, but filled with determination. "Do you want me to turn away from everything I've worked for all my life? Sorry, but I can't. And I won't." The judge took a deep breath, her gaze cold and clear. "I'm not asking you to give up. I'm asking you to understand that true leadership isn't about charging forward, ignoring everything, but about changing your plans when necessary. You can't walk the path of self-sacrifice if you're not willing to pay the highest price, the price of human lives, the price of moral principles." Elon took a few steps back. His heart was beating faster. What if she was right? What if everything he was fighting for didn't matter? If he lost his humanity? A whirlwind of thoughts spun in his head, but they all boiled down to one question. Was it all worth it? But even stronger than the doubt was his anger. Anger at himself for beginning to question, anger at her for making him hear these words. "You don't understand," he said through gritted teeth. "I can't back down. If I step back now, I will give up. And then everything I've worked for will just be an illusion." The judge moved closer, not breaking eye contact. "And what if your illusion destroys you along with everyone around you? What will be left when you burn in your own fire? If you're not willing to feel the pain and loss now, you won't understand what truly matters in this world." Silence filled the room, and each of the judge's words tore at him. But he couldn't find an answer. His ambitions, his goals, all of it seemed so important, but the more he tried to maintain control, the more he felt these ideas slipping away from him. He realized he was standing at a crossroads. He could continue the fight, but at the same time, every step became more uncertain. "I can't stop," he repeated, more to convince himself than her. "And I won't." The judge looked at him and finally spoke words that struck like lightning in the air. Elon stood still, as if made of stone, his mind searching for an exit, but there was no answer. The judge looked at him, showing neither surprise nor compassion. She knew his choice had already been made, even if he wasn't ready to acknowledge it. He turned, took a step back, then another. He felt the weight in his chest tighten, his heart compressing with tension. Every movement seemed heavy, as if walking on a razor's edge. But he couldn't stop. He couldn't allow himself to give up on what he had built for so long. "You're right," he said finally, his voice soft but resolute. "I'm ready. But I'm going to the end, even if it's my last battle." The judge didn't answer, just looked at him with one of those glances that silently affirmed, "This is your choice." Only then did he understand that all these months of doubt, struggle, and decisions had led to this moment, the moment when he had to take the final step. Elon walked out of the room, every step echoing what he was leaving behind. He didn't know what awaited him, but now he fully understood. The price he was willing to pay was high. It wasn't just about money or victories. It was something more, a loss that remained inside, even if it wasn't immediately visible on the outside. He headed into the darkness, where all his efforts, ambitions, and hopes had to be justified or shattered. But there was no turning back. We all live on the edge. Sometimes, to achieve greatness, we must leave everything behind. Elon understood that he would have to walk this path alone. Whether he would find what he sought or not was still uncertain. But he was ready to go, even if it meant walking into the darkness. And this darkness might have no end. Elon walked through the dark hallways of the courthouse, hearing his footsteps echo in the empty space. He knew this decision would change everything he had built. Thoughts swirled in his head about how everything would unfold. What comes next? Would he find what he was looking for, or would he be left with empty hands? When he stepped outside, he took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling the cold wind cutting through his clothes. He lifted his head and looked at the night sky, so familiar yet so distant. The moon shone brighter than ever, as if signaling that every step he took, every decision he made, was part of something bigger. And then, at the threshold of this new chapter, she approached him, the judge. There was understanding in her eyes, yet something in her gaze suggested even she couldn't predict how this story would end. "You made a tough choice," she said softly, "but it was necessary." Elon nodded silently. He wasn't looking for apologies or expecting comfort. He had accepted his fate. "Maybe now you'll see the world differently," she continued. "But remember, sometimes the hardest path is the best. Sometimes change starts with one step." She left him with these words, and he stood still, not moving. He didn't have clarity about the future, but he felt that this step had changed him forever. He was now ready to look at the world in a new way, to understand it deeper, and to ask new questions. Elon slowly moved forward, ready to face his future, even if it remained shrouded in uncertainty. He didn't know where this path would lead, but one thing was clear. He had made a choice not to retreat, but to move forward. And even though darkness still surrounded him, he already knew, with each step, it became smaller. And this was his first victory. Then are you truly ready for that price? These words hung in the air like a shadow, looming over all his choices.